An empire that ruled the world did not fall in a day. It fell slowly from within. At its peak, Rome was not just powerful. It was unmatched in scale, discipline, and influence. Its empire stretched across vast continents, connecting lands that had never been connected before. From Europe to North Africa, from the Middle East to distant provinces, Rome's reach was everywhere. Roads were built not just for travel, but for control. They formed the backbone of an empire that seemed impossible to break. At its height, Rome was not just a city of power. It was a system that controlled daily life in ways most people today would struggle to imagine. Everything from trade to law to entertainment was structured under one central authority. Life in Rome was not only structured, it was overwhelming in its scale. The city never truly slept. At sunrise, the streets were already full of movement. By midday, the heat mixed with noise, voices, and constant activity. Everything felt alive, yet tightly controlled. Massive arenas filled with thousands of spectators watching gladiators fight for survival. It was both celebration and control. Entertainment and power combined into one. The Roman Forum was filled with life. Merchants called out their goods in crowded markets. Senators gathered to debate laws that shaped entire nations. Citizens walked through the city believing their empire would never end, but beneath this order was something dangerous: pride. Rome was not only built on greatness, but on constant conquest. Its legions were the most disciplined military force the ancient world had ever seen. What made the Roman military even more powerful was not just training, but repetition over time. Soldiers were not simply taught how to fight. They were taught how to move, think, and react as a single unit. This level of coordination made Rome extremely difficult to resist in open battle. Opposing armies often collapsed not because they were weaker, but because they were less organized across deserts, rivers, mountains, and foreign lands. They advanced without hesitation. Kingdom after kingdom fell under Roman control. With every victory, the empire expanded further, but expansion always comes with a cost. As Rome expanded, something began to change quietly. Distance made control harder. Communication between regions slowed. Local governors gained more influence than the central power realized. Messages that once took days now took weeks. Local leaders began making decisions on their own authority, and slowly, the idea of a perfectly unified empire began to weaken. Rome still appeared strong from the outside, but internally it was becoming more complex and harder to control. Then came Julius Caesar, a man who did not simply rise within Rome. He began to reshape it. Caesar was admired by the people for his leadership and ambition, but within the Senate he was seen differently, not as a leader, but as a threat. Behind the marble walls of the Senate, tension slowly built over time. Whispers of distrust spread among Rome's most powerful men, and in Rome, fear rarely remains passive. It eventually demands action. On a quiet day, Caesar entered the Senate chamber. Betrayal arrived suddenly, and without warning. Steel was drawn from beneath robes, and in a moment that would echo through history, Caesar fell. Rome did not unite after Caesar. It fractured. Civil war spread rapidly across the empire. Brother fought brother. Entire cities were pulled into conflict and destruction. Rome was collapsing inward. Leadership changed constantly. Corruption slowly spread through political and military systems. Trade routes slowed. Trust between provinces disappeared. The unity that defined Rome began to fade. The empire did not collapse in a single moment. It declined slowly, almost unnoticed at first. Markets became smaller. Public works slowed down. Military supply lines became harder to maintain. What once felt like unstoppable growth turned into slow contraction. Rome was still standing, but it was no longer the Rome that once ruled the world. It faded gradually, like a fire losing its fuel. In the final stages of Rome's decline, the empire no longer expanded with confidence. Instead, it focused on survival. Borders that were once defended with strength became harder to maintain with each passing year. Resources that once flowed easily across the empire began to slow and weaken. What was once a unified system was now struggling to hold itself together. Inside the empire, the signs of decline were becoming more visible. Public trust and leadership continued to weaken. Decisions were no longer made for long-term stability, but for short-term survival. Every new change in leadership brought more uncertainty, and with uncertainty came instability. Even the symbols of Rome's former greatness began to lose meaning. Monuments that once represented power stood as reminders of a different era. Roads that once carried legions across continents became quieter and less maintained. The empire still existed on maps, but its former identity was fading day by day. And so, what remained of Rome was not its former glory, but the memory of it, a lesson written not in books, but in the rise and fall of an entire civilization. History was no longer just about Rome's greatness, but about how that greatness slowly came undone. As time continued, the pressure on the empire became more visible. Managing such a vast territory required constant coordination, but distance made coordination increasingly difficult. What once functioned smoothly now required far more effort to maintain. Military strength still existed, but it was no longer as unified as before. Different regions began facing different challenges. Some areas remained stable, while others struggled with unrest and instability. The balance that once held the empire together was slowly shifting. Over time, unity became harder to sustain. People in distant regions no longer felt the same connection to the center of power. Local identities began to grow stronger, and slowly the idea of one single, unified empire began to weaken in practice, even if not in name. Looking back, the fall of Rome was not caused by a single event. It was the result of many small changes accumulating over centuries. Each change on its own seemed minor, but together they reshaped the entire structure of the empire. And in that long process of change, Rome transformed from an empire of expansion into an empire struggling to preserve what it already had. What once looked permanent slowly revealed itself to be temporary, because even the strongest empires in history do not fall only from external forces, they collapse from within. And as we look back at the rise and fall of Rome, we are reminded that no empire, no matter how powerful, is truly permanent. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic stories, because history is not just what happened, it is what we learn from what fell before us.